Growing up, did you ever scare your parents into believing that you were some sort of schizophrenic psychopath? Did you often feel like you were too strange to make new friends, so instead you made them up yourself? Maybe it was a talking glow-in-the-dark skeleton that lived in your closet, or a giant talking goldfish that lived in your bathtub. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about the horrifying world of imaginary friends. Back in 2018, this family moved into a house, and the younger daughter started talking to somebody that no one else could see. When they confronted her about who she was talking to, she would respond to them and say it was the man with the snake neck. The girl told her family that at night she would be laying in bed and this man with the snake neck would extend his neck just far enough out of the closet to watch her sleep. It was also reported that apparently she told her parents that one day the snake-necked man wants her to go in the closet and never come out. I don't know if this little girl was playing Dark Souls and just became traumatized from the whole experience, but from what I've heard, apparently the family moved out shortly after that occurrence, and I don't blame them. Back in 2015, a 5-year-old girl had this imaginary friend that she called Grandma Bones. When asked about Grandma Bones, she told her parents that it was this eyeless old lady that used to sit in the rocking chair in the corner of her room. And apparently this imaginary friend used to tell this little girl secrets of the ground, which I don't know what that means, but I can only assume it's maybe some body buried beneath the floorboards or something like that. When her parents asked her to draw a picture of Grandma Bones for them, she sketched a photo of a skeleton in a dress sitting behind her bed. You know, I read somewhere that demons naturally go after children because they're more of an easy target and they're generally more naive. You know, I don't know if any of these are actually demons sent from hell to harvest the souls of children, or if they are actually some sort of imaginary friend, but if that's the case, these kids have seen some pretty fucked up shit. So back in 2001, this family that lived in Michigan moved into a new house, and soon after, their 4-year-old son started talking to this boy he saw in the basement named Johnny. The boy was constantly telling his parents that this Johnny kid had a hole in his head and that he couldn't find his parents. I feel like if your kid comes up to you and tells you about a child with a hole in his head that can't find his parents, that's living in your basement, that you probably wouldn't just brush it off as nothing. But I'm not his parents, so. But apparently those parents soon found out that in 1967, a child died in that very basement from an accidental gunshot wound to the head. I mean, it's possible that this 4-year-old boy might have found some newspaper clipping that had the information of this child on it, or he actually saw Johnny's ghost. Back in 2017, this babysitter was watching this little girl while her parents were out of town. She told her babysitter about her imaginary friend named Lily, who apparently had burned hands, red eyes, and hated mirrors. Apparently this Lily person followed her home from the hospital one day, and she's been living with her ever since. I read that when the babysitter brought a hand mirror into the room with her, that the child started screaming until it was removed. You know, when I was a kid, I actually was pretty terrified of mirrors. I watched this episode of Tales from the Dark Side where this girl was haunted by a ghost and she could only see it in a mirror. She was so terrified of this ghost that she covered all her mirrors in blankets. And in the episode, she gets burglarized and the robber ends up knocking one of the blankets off the mirrors, and he sees this disgusting ghoulish face in the mirror, and he falls off the stairs to his death. Eventually, I shook this fear of mirrors sometime in my late teenage years. Also, that scene from the 2007 Amityville Horror, where the little boy gets up to go pee in the middle of the night and he sees that ghost standing in the mirror behind him. That scene also didn't help with my crippling fear of mirrors as a child. Another instance of imaginary friends happened to a family back in Oregon in the year 2020. This toddler kept talking about the other mommy that lived beneath the floorboards and would whisper to him through the vents. Apparently, this other mom looked just like their mom, but had black eyes and no teeth. So I'm pretty sure the kid watched Coraline. And the last imaginary friend I want to talk to you guys about is the Black-Hatted Man. The Black-Hatted Man was discovered from a diary entry from a young girl named Emma back in the year 2004. When they discovered this diary back in 2011, they flipped through it, and every page described in detail this man in a black hat that would stand in the corner of her room and watch her sleep without blinking. And when they were flipping through this diary, they noticed that the entries were dated from 2004 all the way to 2005. So Emma had been experiencing all of this for over a year. So I don't know if Emma was actually being stalked by some creepy man in a black hat, or if her imagination had been torturing her for over a year, but she probably should have told somebody. So if you guys have kids, maybe pay close attention to the media they consume, because it might just scar them for life. You know, reading about all these kids with imaginary friends, I'm trying to recall if I had anything sort of like that when I was younger. I guess the closest thing to any of this was when I was younger, I really looked up to Luke Skywalker. So during class, I would pretend that Yoda was sitting on my desk, giving me the answers to all the classwork. Turns out that Yoda is really not good at world geography. Anyways, folks, that's the video. If you guys had any imaginary friends, tell me about them in the comments. I want to hear about them. Hopefully they didn't torment you too much as a child, and they were less creepy than the ones I talked about in this video. So, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.